Today I'm presenting our work accelerating multipath transport through balanced subflow completion. So using multiple networks at the same time have been widely adopted. We have seen that multipath TCP is standardized by IETF and implemented on top of TCP in Linux. We have also seen that the latest versions of Android and iOS has provided multipath APIs for mobile applications. So the multipath transport is becoming mainstream on mobile devices. One important component in multipath transport is the multipath scheduler. The scheduler determines how to distribute data over multiple subflows. We have seen many multipath schedulers in the existing work focusing on different aspects. So in this work, we focus on reducing the download time of data chunks. So minimizing download time is important for many applications. For example, file download, web browsing, and chunk of video streaming, including the adaptive bitrate streaming. So we ask this question: how can we optimize download time for multipath transport? So let's first look at the default multipath scheduler in MPTCP, the MinRTT scheduler. So MinRTT scheduler aims at better performance over multiple network paths compared to single paths like just using Wi-Fi or LTE network. However, we found that MinRTT scheduler provides suboptimal download time over multiple network paths. So as a motivating example on this slide, we emulate Wi-Fi and LTE networks on a laptop with network characteristics from a recent large-scale measurements. So we use these settings to download two file sizes. The first one is 1 megabyte. The second one is 256 kilobytes. So in this figure, we show the performance, the download time under MinRTT basically shown in the red line, and the optimal scheduling shown in the green line. So to get the optimal performance under the optimal scheduling, we use offline search over how data is allocated to two paths and get the shortest download time. So as we can see in this figure, basically for two file sizes, MinRTT increases the download time by up to 33% in this case. So under the real network conditions where both paths have variability, we see that MinRTT scheduler inflates the download time by up to 7 times compared to optimal scheduling. So this clearly shows that MinRTT does not perform well in terms of the download time. So why does MinRTT does not perform well? So to answer this question, we look at the subflow completion time difference at the receiver side for both schedulers. So in the left figure, we see that the red line is the MinRTT one. The MinRTT subflow completion time difference. The green one is the optimal one. So for MinRTT, we see that two subflows finish at different times. Basically, the red lines are above 0. And for the optimal scheduling, both subflows finish at the same time on the receiver side. So here's the thing. So this is an important implication from the results. So suppose we have two subflows finish at different times at the receiver side. Say on the right diagram, subflow 2 completes the receiving data later than subflow 1. So in this case, subflow 2 can offload some bytes to subflow 1 for transmission to achieve a shorter download time. So the key insight here is that to achieve the optimal download time, subflow needs to complete at the same time at the receiver side. So basically, following this insight, we design, implement, and evaluate DEMS, the decoupled multipath scheduler, a new multipath scheduler aiming at reducing the chunk download time over multiple network paths. So DEMS has 3 key design decisions: the decoupled chunk-based transfer, the simultaneous subflow completion, and the adaptive reinjection based on online network prediction. I'll go over the details of 3 design aspects shortly. So the first design aspect is the decoupled chunk-based transfer. So in DEMS, by default, data is delivered to the application on a per chunk basis. So a data chunk consists of a block of bytes from mobile applications. For example, the chunk can be an image, can be a JavaScript, or a video chunk. So since application needs to receive all data within a chunk before processing the data, so the bytes within a chunk can be delivered in any order over the networks. So this is important for our first design aspect. Basically, for the common scenarios involving two paths such as Wi-Fi and LTE on mobile devices, DEMS decouples two subflows with two-way splitting. So this means that two paths transfer the data in opposite direction, one from the beginning and the other from the end. So when they meet each other in the middle, something like here, the chunk is fully downloaded. So in this way, the sender can send as fast as possible at the beginning of the transfer without even network prediction. And in this case, basically the transmission at the beginning over two subflows are fully decoupled. Now let us consider how to make the two subflows complete simultaneously at the receiver side. So the high-level idea here is to introduce a timing offset at the sender side to compensate the packet transmission delay difference across subflows. So let's go over an example to see how this is done in details. So consider downloading a data chunk over two paths. So in this figure, basically x-axis is the time, y-axis is the sequence number in the data chunk. So we have two subflows. So subflow 1, shown in orange, has smaller one-way delay. And subflow 2, shown in green line, has larger one-way delay. So basically, because we use the decoupled chunk-based transfer, two subflows transmit from different ends of the chunk towards the middle. So to ensure that at the receiver side, both subflows finish at the same time, something like this in the left figure. At the sender side, basically the flow, basically the green one, with the larger one-way delay, needs to finish transmission earlier than the other one. And the amount of this timing offset is a one-way delay difference between two subflows. So we have more details in the paper how this is derived. So next, let's look at how DEMS decides over time when to stop the subflow with larger one-way delay to guarantee the simultaneous subflow completion we just talked about. So recall that DEMS only uses network prediction towards the end of transmission. So towards the end of transmission, DEMS predicts the packet arrival time over both subflows and choose the subflow with an earlier arrival time. So in the same example here at the sender side, we have two subflows, and by leveraging the bandwidth and one-way delay, DEMS can predict the packet arrival time over two subflows at the receiver side. So take two packets as example, packet A and packet B. So for packet A, showing here, so DEMS has two options to transmit this packet. You can either transmit this packet on subflow 1, like the orange one, or the subflow 2, the green one. So basically, after the prediction, we found that the packet arrival time on subflow 2 is earlier than the subflow 1. So in this case, basically, the DEMS will choose subflow 2 to transmit this packet. And we can see that this is actually before the stopping point. However, for packet B, so after the stopping point, even if this packet can be transmitted earlier on subflow 2 at the sender side, the packet is predicted to arrive earlier on subflow 1, basically the other subflow. So in this case, DEMS chooses to wait until packet B can be transmitted on subflow 1. So far, we assume that the network bandwidth and delay are accurately predicted, so we can guarantee this simultaneous subflow completion. In reality, our wireless networks usually have changing bandwidth and one-way delay. So this makes the accurate network prediction challenging. So the inaccurate network prediction leads to unbalanced subflow completion, thus the longer download time. So for example, in this figure, similar example to the previous slide, the dotted line is the predicted data transmission over each subflow. So you will see that if subflow 2 has sudden increased one-way delay, so the one-way delay difference in DEMS will be underestimated. So in that case, basically at the sender side, we will see that the subflow finish at different times. So how can we address this issue? So to address this issue, we introduced the controlled redundancy to DEMS. So this means that after two subflows meet in the middle, a subflow may further overshoot its portion by sending a small number of bytes beyond the meeting point. So in this case, some bytes in this data chunk are transmitted twice on both subflows, and we call this a reinjection. So we use this reinjection mechanism to account for the network variability. So a naive approach of doing reinjection is to reinject any unacknowledged data at the sender side. However, we found this approach can potentially introduce too much redundant data. And sometimes this is not necessary. So recall the previous example. So only when the network variability is high or there's inaccuracy in the network prediction, more redundant data is necessary to compensate this inaccurate prediction. So we designed the adaptive reinjection to make the redundant bytes depend on the variability of the one-way delay and bandwidth we use in DEMS. So for example, in this case, the network variability is delta here. And the red line here shows the amount of redundant data based on this variability. So you can clearly see here that the amount of redundant bytes depends on the variability. And we have more details of the mathematical derivation in our paper. So from these slides, we can show that when the variability is high, the reinjected data are larger. When the variability is low, the amount of reinjected bytes are smaller. So thus, we can control the redundancy based on the network condition. So based on these three key design decisions, we implemented a research prototype of DEMS in Android and Linux, and we make our system transparent to applications so it can run unmodified mobile applications on DEMS. To evaluate the benefit of different design aspects, we look at three variants of DEMS scheduler. So the first one is DEMS-B. B stands for basic. DEMS-B has the simultaneous subflow completion mechanism, but no reinjection. The second one is DEMS-S. S stands for simple reinjection. So this means that the sender reinjects any unacknowledged data at the sender side. So the third one is DEMS-F. F stands for full. So DEMS-F has all the design aspects I just talked about with adaptive reinjection. So we evaluate DEMS using file download and web browsing. And we consider both the emulated and real multipath networks of Wi-Fi and LTE. We use both the laptop and the smartphone to demonstrate the effectiveness of DEMS. So in this presentation, I just focus on three evaluation scenarios, and I encourage you to read more details of other scenarios in our paper. So the first scenario we talk about is the file download. So we evaluate the file download with DEMS under time-varying path bandwidth. As I just mentioned, because wireless networks has changing bandwidth, this is more common scenarios. So we record and replay a 5-minute bandwidth profile. And these bandwidth profiles are highly variable. The standard deviation is up to 50% and 90% of mean bandwidth of Wi-Fi and LTE networks. So in this figure, we compare three variants of DEMS. So we see that DEMS-B performs worse than DEMS-S and DEMS-F. So this is because DEMS-B doesn't have reinjection, and the changing bandwidth can cause the unbalanced subflow completion. So next, we look at the reinjection. So we compare DEMS-S and DEMS-F. We found that the performance are similar, but DEMS-S reinjects much more data than DEMS-F, up to 7 times. So this shows the effectiveness of adaptive reinjection. So overall, we found that DEMS-F reduces median download time by 12% to 46%. So we next show the file download performance with DEMS under real-world settings. So we use the smartphone to do this evaluation. So in this figure, we see that DEMS outperforms MinRTT across all 5 locations. And quantitatively, the median file download time is reduced by 33%, 48%, and 42% for 3 different file sizes. So for the third scenario, we investigate how DEMS helps improve the quality of experience of web browsing, one of the most popular applications on mobile devices. So we use the page load time as a metric. So we repeat the web page loading experiments using off-the-shelf Chrome browser on a Nexus 6P smartphone under the control environments. So we repeat the, so basically we observe 6% to 43% page load time reduction across 10 different pages. So to understand why DEMS helps reduce the page load time, we take a closer look at the web object transmission pattern. So we look at the waterfall diagrams of both MinRTT and DEMS shown in this slide. And so these two waterfall diagrams shows the page loading of the same web page. And we can see that the web page loading forms many small or medium-sized chunks. And each chunk can be well optimized by DEMS, as we can see the orange bar in these two diagrams. So thus, the overall page load time can be reduced. So in conclusion, we presented the design and evaluation of DEMS. So DEMS significantly outperforms default MinRTT scheduler. The file download time is reduced by 33% to 48% under real network conditions in our experiments. And the performance improvement of DEMS is attributed to 3 key design decisions: the decoupled chunk-based transfer, the simultaneous subflow completion, and the adaptive reinjection. So that's all, and thank you. So and we also welcome you to check our demos of DEMS later today. And I'd love to take any question from now.
Thank you.